Greetings, young viewers. Let me take you back in time for a short bit, to a time when it was great to be a car guy, because there was an absolute surplus of affordable used rides available. $500 running cars as far as the eye could see. I'm talking Fox body Mustangs, 3rd Gen F bodies, bread and potato mini trucks, family wagons, sport coupes, Malaise and Rad era luxury cars, and enough Impalas and Caprices to fill Lake Erie. These pictures, these cars, these are just some of the cars I have owned, as I have owned over 200 in my lifetime. At any given point, I've typically owned no less than 6 cars at once. And once, when my buying car addiction was at its peak around 2001, I once owned 21 cars at one time. Now, you're probably wondering what kind of drugs I was peddling to afford such a crippling car buying addiction. But that's the thing. I didn't. I worked at a car wash and ran scrap metal on the weekends. It's just cars used to be that cheap. Now that we've established that I wasn't a drug dealer,
What do you sell? Eights.
I never did any drugs either. My drug of choice was buying and driving old cars. And my dealer? Well, that's where the Junklot comes in. If you're over 30, you might remember what I'm talking about. If you're under 30, let me tell you that car lots used to be something completely different. Budget car lots, or as my fellow gearheads and I always dubbed them, the Junklots, were like the wild, wild west of the car lot world. These lots were pretty much cash only, typically didn't have cars over $2,000, and could have you on the road in an old jalopy in under an hour. To add to that, these lots used to be so plentiful that you could throw a stone and hit one. In the town I'm from in the Midwest, there was a road called Spring Mill that typically had a strip of no less than a dozen of these car lots just shoved together. Now, when these junk lots were in full swing, I was pretty young. I was buying cars to turn them into race cars for the local speedway, or just to run amok on a backcountry road. However, I knew a lot of working class families that would go and spend $800-900 on a car at one of these lots, and it would typically last them 3 to 5 years. Which, if you're struggling with a family and need something to commute to work or pick the kids up to school with, a car that lasted that long for that little bit of money was terrific. I mean, mine never lasted that long, but that's because I was seeing how high I could jump them off some railroad tracks out in the middle of nowhere. But my point is that if I broke one beyond repair, I'd just take it to the scrapyard, save for a few weeks, buy another one from another junk lot. Keep in mind that while they did run, these cars were far from perfect. Bald tires, missing radios, features that didn't work, and rust issues abound. Take for instance the best car I got off of one of these lots. It was a '79 Dodge Diplomat Coupe with a 318 V8, sunroof, and posi track rear. To boot, a previous owner had bolted up a cop car suspension in it, so even with the bald 75 series tires that the thing came on, it handled great too.
It's got a cop motor, a 440 cubic inch plant. It's got cop tires, cop suspension, cop shocks. It was a model made before catalytic converters, so it'll run good on regular gas.
And I only paid $250 cash for it. Sound too good to be true? Well, it wasn't perfect, as it was also painted black by the previous owner with a paintbrush, and it was literally house paint. Then, thought it'd be a great idea to add blue pinstripes to it, and then red disc hubcaps. And it had a good case of old Midwestern rot on the rear of the body. Alright, it wasn't like I was winning any car shows with it. And it's not like a Dodge Diplomat has, I don't know, the the most sought-after pedigree. And I had to keep a portable boombox in the front seat with me because the radio just refused to work. But it won a few races at the local strip. I sailed that thing over railroad tracks like it had wings. I used to flat tow other dead cars with it. And once, I even took the trunk lid off and went to the junkyard to buy an engine I needed for another car, and then hauled that engine home in the open trunk of the Diplomat. I mean, this thing was just an absolute blast to drive for a summer. All $250 worth. So if these budget car lots were such a great place to find project cars, supplied cheap transportation to the working class, and were a dream to cheap car guys like you and me, where did they all go? Well, unfortunately, I can tell you, they succumbed to our two favorite entities in the world: government and banks. In the late 80s, cash-only budget lots began to be overtaken by a new kind of car lot: the buy here, pay here lot. Buy here, pay here lots were a completely different concept than the cash ones. They carried much later models and would finance you themselves. I use the term finance as a very loose term, as back in the day, these buy here, pay here lots were unregulated nightmares for car buyers. You see, any Joe Blow could start either a cash or a buy here, pay here lot. Only you're giving the Joe at the buy here, pay here lot all of your banking and credit information in hopes that they might sell you a car. Just how crooked these guys were. There was a lot owner in the town that I was from that not only used the personal information of his customers to turn on and use the utilities at his home, but for his entire family as well. You know that stigmata that's always kind of associated with used car salesmen? It literally comes from this era. So how do these places stay in business? Well, the down payment on a buy here, pay here car was typically all the lot had paid for the car, so all the payments made afterwards were sheer profit. To add to that, they just kept adding exorbitant fees like convenience fees, finance, and dealer fees. Over the course of the 90s and early 2000s, the whole buy here, pay here lot thing had become kind of regulated, and people wanted to have later model cars. It seemed people preferred purchasing cars this way, as they were willing to pay all the extra to have a late model car instead of buying an older car that needed some minor issues taken care of.
Need some suspension work and shocks and brakes, brake pads, lining, steering box, transmission, rear end. How much? Only $4,800. Maybe new rings, also mufflers, a little wiring.
The second biggest factor in this was that the government hit the Junklots supply chain impossibly hard in 2009 with Obama's Cash for Clunkers program. 677,081 cars disappeared from the car market overnight due to this program. That's the number according to this article here on thedrive.com. However, I firsthand know that new car dealers didn't just stick to these models that they were supposed to and found loopholes to take in many other models. So if the Drive.com's numbers are correct, which it should be, saying they got it from a government site, the actual number is really higher. Not only did this impact the rad era of cars hard, it hit these junk lot dealers the hardest. Most of these lots were either forced into the buy here, pay here route to survive, or inevitably had to close the doors due to a lack of supply. The negative annotations of this program are the topic of a whole nother video entirely. But know that with the EV push from the government, this is eventually going to lead to another Cash for Clunkers program.
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband.
Now, some smaller contributing factors in this would be like the increase of automobile technology. That technology has certainly made it more difficult and expensive to work on cars. And when I say technology, keep in mind that half the cars I got off these lots were carbureted since I was buying them in the 90s, so it was rad and malaise era cars. While it does relate back to the whole cash for clunkers thing being the main reason for it, used car prices, like most things, have gone through the roof. You guys know this. Scrap metal prices for them have stayed consistently high for most of the years since the program's inception. That, teamed with the fact that people would rather overpay for a nice late model ride instead of putting money in an old car that they actually own, as opposed to, the bank owning it. Lot owners know the profit margin isn't that high anymore on cash cars. On top of having the convenience of a place to buy a $250 car right around the corner, they were just something to do. Fellow gearheads and I would cruise down to the Junklots and just walk the lots, perusing the cars, making fun of some, wanting to buy others. It was kind of like walking through the junkyard with a buddy or something. I mean, we're car guys. We get this. If you're not a car guy and you're watching this, you probably don't get this. But it's just really interesting, looking at a bunch of old cars at one time and wondering what their stories might have been, what they have been through. At least it always was to me. Is it to you? Do you have any memories of Junklots? Tell me in the comments section below. I'm sure most of that's going to come from my over 30 crowd. Too young to remember but want to know more? Let me know that in the comments as well. I love to hear from my viewers. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. If you liked today's video, give it the old thumbs up, share it with your friends. The description below is full of goodies, including the video sponsor, links to Cruizers' social media, and where to get Cruizers merch. Remember, if you buy a Cruiser sticker, I'll throw a picture of it of your ride right here in a video. I thank you all so much for the support, my friends, and remember, those friends, they're the family you get to choose. I'll see you next week, fellow Cruisers.